people in our community ask what's the difference between NFT standards that we are seeing on Ethereum today and the standards that we develop within LUKSO. And I will explain that right now. The most common NFT standard in Ethereum is 721. So 721 is basically a smart contract that has a mapping of IDs, for example 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 5, 1, 2, 6, right? It has a mapping of certain IDs to an address, 0x12 and 0xCA and 0xDF, and that's already, my mapping is a little map, and 0x11. So basically in 721 we simply map IDs to addresses. And what we have attached for each ID we can have a JSON document that describes the asset itself. So the problem with that is, and this is a nice evolution of ERC20, and it's basically just adding this one ID factor to it. Later there came a ERC721 token receive function and so on. And what's the difference to what we are developing is basically making those assets more interactable, more smart contract readable, and importantly, we have new type of digital assets where it's not only about one unique item, but where it's about you have an asset that maybe exists 1,000 times, or maybe exists 100 times. So I proposed a standard in 2017 called ERC725, and ERC725 is what we are using for universal profiles, which is smart contract based accounts, but also for what we call digital certificates, or you'd call it NFT 2.0. So what this basically means is we have a 725 contract which has a key value store that it can attach information. So you have a little key value store. And we have a combination where we attach a 777. Hi Nikita. Where we attach a 777. And the 777 is literally the same like in ERC20, but it has some extra fanciness to it, which we even modify within our standards. But I will not go into that detail. But you could assume that a 727 is like an ERC20. So it means there's a number mapped to an address, and almost every wallet in the blockchain space that is compatible with ERC20, or Ethereum actually is also compatible with ERC20. So what we are able to do here is basically we have a key value store, and we have the ability to actually have a account address like different addresses, like make the same. And each one then has a mapping to a number, which could be 1, or this guy could own 2. So the benefit here is if I want to issue 1,000 assets of a 7-to-1, I would literally either have a batch functionality, or I have to call the min function 1,000 times because I have to create 1,000 different IDs that then later can be mapped to 1,000 different addresses. I also have to update the JSON file for each one. While here I create one smart contract that defines one type of asset, I can have a key value store that either links to a JSON file, right? So this could be a JSON file, but it also has an owner, and the owner is, in this case, when we're talking about NFTs, obviously the creator, which would link back to his universal profile, or just the key, which obviously is not recommended. And that owner is also able to update this key value store. You can also then add all kind of new things. You can add a reputation system. You can add a token that's related to those items. You could have all kind of new smart contracts and new kind of like things that are smart contract readable and has to be smart contract readable added to this key value store. But if I want to create 1,000 assets here, I simply have to create one function, call the min function to one specific address, and I can create 1,000 units, right? Because I'm just creating a number. In this case, What we're doing here is we are getting rid of the decimal amount. So every ERC20 normally has a decimal amount defined, which normally is 18, and we basically put it to 0, so that each single unit, so each lowest unit of the token represents one item. There's some other fanciness to it, like the ability to inform other smart contracts when they receive things. This is our first standard we actually proposed, called LSP1, which is the Universal Receiver Contract that works in combination with the Universal Profiles. So that means when you are sending an asset to a Universal Profile, that Universal Profile will be informed. And that standard also works for any kind of asset in the future, so we don't have to come up with thousands of functions that you have to implement in your Universal Profile. But in simple terms, the difference is that this is actually an evolution and a bit more sophisticated version of what L721 right now is, which is a simple mapping between an ID and an address. And on top of that, you could also do batch processing. Then we would be in the range of 1155, which is nothing else than combining a bunch of ERC20 or 721 into one smart contract, giving it some extra batch functionality. All of these things can come later, or we can just use things from the 1155 standard for that. But the essence of having more flexible assets, more flexible NFTs is kind of like the key. I hope that makes it more clear, or you're even more confused than before. Anyway, that's it. You can read the standards in our LSP repository if you want to dig into the technicalities.